All right. Well, welcome and thanks for joining us today. As an organization based in Canada, the Stephen Lewis Foundation acknowledges that our presence here is a direct outcome of the settler colonial state, whose policies of expulsion from the land and cultural genocide continue to impact Indigenous communities today. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission's 94 calls to action reaffirms that the treaties with Indigenous peoples must be lawfully honored. We are all treaty peoples and responsible for honoring and upholding these agreements. The Stephen Lewis Foundation also acknowledges that oppressive and inequitable socioeconomic and political systems in Canada continue to perpetuate this legacy of racism, intergenerational trauma, and structural inequality, and that this legacy is directly linked to the disproportionate impact of HIV on Indigenous communities within Canada. The Stephen Lewis Foundation is committed to the principles of social justice, equality, and solidarity with our community-based partners as they face the continued effects of the HIV and AIDS pandemic in sub-Saharan Africa. Consistent with those values, the Stephen Lewis Foundation commits to a journey of ongoing learning, reflection, relationship building, and solidarity with Indigenous communities here in Canada. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Sarah Dopp. I'm the Senior Manager of the Grandmothers Campaign at the Stephen Lewis Foundation, and we're excited to host this conversation between Idah Mukuka Nambeya, the Senior Advisor to the Grandmothers Campaign, and Niambi Martin-John, the Director of Development at the Stephen Lewis Foundation. Before I introduce and welcome Niambi and Idah, I'd like to take care of a few housekeeping details. If you have any technical issues today, please feel free to use the chat function to send us a message directly. Towards the end of this session, there will be a Q&A, and you can submit your questions through the Q&A feature. This button can be found on the bottom of your screen if you're joining us by computer, and at the top of your screen if you're joining on a mobile or tablet device. And finally, we invite you to participate in today's discussion through the chat. Please feel free to share where you're joining us from and your reactions. Let me just introduce our two speakers today. Idah Mukuka Nambeya is the Senior Advisor to the Stephen Lewis Foundation's Grandmothers to Grandmothers campaign, working with grandmothers to strengthen the bonds of solidarity. She is a passionate HIV activist and gifted counselor based in Lusaka, Zambia. Idah's leadership and activism earned her a fellowship to study at the Coady Institute at St. Francis Xavier University in Antigonish, Nova Scotia. While studying at St. FX, she was awarded the Catherine Fleming Award for International Development. And in 2005, Idah completed her studies and returned home to Zambia, where she was nominated for and received the Red Ribbon Award, an award to recognize her contributions on HIV and AIDS and community service. For 9 years, Idah was one of the SLF's trusted field representatives, using her extensive knowledge and experience to help build the capacity of grassroots organizations throughout sub-Saharan Africa. Niambi Martin-John is a social change champion, community mobilizer, advocate, and fund development specialist who has dedicated her career to increasing capacity for marginalized, racialized, and at-risk communities. For more than 20 years, Niambi has held leadership roles in the health, charity, arts, and social services sectors. Her approach is mission-centered, integrated, collaborative, and partner-informed, with a focus on driving revenue, creating space, and empowering community members. She values the power of solidarity and allies in action. With a background in community development and storytelling, Niambi generates opportunities to learn from partners and communities by weaving their narratives and insights into organizational approaches, and through meaningful engagement to deepen relationships. Niambi and Idah, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for putting together this conversation today. I believe both Idah and I have been looking forward to having this great conversation with all of you. And I want to thank Idah for joining us and for committing to tell us authentic stories surrounding HIV and AIDS and the great work that is being done by community organizations especially in her community. So Idah, I wanted to start our conversation just by starting the tone with asking you a little bit about what community means to you.
Thank you so much, Niambi. I think I can already see the greetings from the people that are watching. I saw Pat. Thank you so much for the greetings from everyone who is watching. I think community to me is a group of people that come together with same values, sometimes with same beliefs. And we can have different communities when people come together sometimes to pursue the same goal. We've seen, I belong to an HIV community. This is a community that came together because of different issues that were surrounding HIV and AIDS. There was stigma, discrimination, and all those issues. And people came together, like people living with HIV came together to try and pursue the same goal, to end stigma, to be able to be accepted, to take the drugs, to deal with a lot of things. And we have a lot of different communities. Right now, we do have the Grandmother Campaign. It's a community that came together to say, we need to stand by the side of our sisters in Africa. That's also our community. The Stephen Lewis Foundation is a community because even though they are employees, they are people who came together. They have the same beliefs and same values. They value what the foundation does. So we do definitely have different communities, and I see communities like that. Even here in Africa, when we come to Africa, we have different communities. I belong to different communities. I have a church, it's a community. I recently shifted to a new place. I have to make efforts to make sure that I fit in the community. So I've been trying to involve myself in different ways so that the community knows me. And for us, it's huge to be able to be known to the community, because then whenever something happens, community will surround you, especially when death happens, the community will come. And so I see the community like that, or that's how I see what a community means to me. Yeah.
That's awesome. I really like what you just said about the fact that whenever there are situations, it is community that surrounds you. And so I want to really ask you about the current response to COVID-19 and how community-based organizations are responding, but also in terms of on a national and government level, what is the situation like right now in terms of response to COVID-19?
Well, thank you. In terms of the COVID-19, like when it comes to Zambia, like any other country, the country is trying to come up with different strategies, of course, with the guidelines from the WHO to be able to help people fit in or be able to access the services that are surrounding the COVID-19. Right now, we have what they call the golden rules, and the golden rules are the rules that aim at protecting people, self-protection, which they are saying people must mask up, people should wash hands regularly, they should sanitize, they should maintain social distance, they should be able to avoid the crowds and seek medical treatment whenever they are sick. And also they've come up with these strategies in Zambia, what they call the 9 strategies, which they are trying to make sure that we go by. Like you go for tests, even though you are not sick, you have to go and get tested. They want to make sure that they embark on infection prevention and risky communication, logistics, and what they are calling essential health services. So there's quite a number of things a number of strategies that they've put in place. And when it comes to the community-based organizations, these are people that have already proved leadership with the HIV and AIDS pandemic. And what we've seen already is that some of the strategies that they've been using around HIV and AIDS are beginning to be used during the COVID-19. We are seeing that they are already involved in education, in sensitizing, and in also delivering the masks. So whatever was happening with HIV is already being done. And so we see that the community-based organizations are already involved. They are involved at a large scale, not even a small scale, because they were already working. COVID-19 has found them working. And so these are some of the things that are actually happening around the COVID-19 response in Zambia. Yeah.
That's great. I mean, it shows that all of the learnings that community-based organizations have had when it comes to HIV and AIDS can now be applied to the pandemic response. And so in terms of community-based organizations being able to collaborate with each other and with public health, how is that collaboration taking place, or are they able to collaborate, or are people working kind of individually within silos due to the pandemic?
I think I would say that the community-based organizations already showed a good leadership, and they're already seen as experts. When HIV and AIDS came to our communities, government could not do everything. Sometimes they did not know in which community people were dying a lot. It is the community-based organizations themselves that were there to see how people were dying. And the strategies of how to deal with HIV started at the community-based organizations. They saw the people were dying. They needed to be involved with home-based care so that they can be able to see their people die in dignity. They were supposed to be able to feed their people, to be able to take care of the orphan vulnerable children. And so all these strategies were being done by the community-based organizations. And today we have the COVID-19. They definitely need the community-based organizations. They need to tap into their expertise. I recently attended the meeting. I was involved, I was actually representing the Council of Churches. And I saw that government pulled different stakeholders, different NGOs came to the table to be able to discuss how do we proceed with the COVID-19. And the Ministry of Health was there to listen to the different community-based organizations on what strategies they should apply on the ground. And so we have to say that the community-based organizations are definitely taking a lead in the COVID-19, supplementing government efforts. They are in the lead to do the work. And I know even in other countries, it's already happening. In other different countries where we have our partners, we are seeing already what the community-based organizations are doing. They are already starting to deliver masks because they delivered the food. They were taking food to the communities during HIV when the grandmothers were there struggling with the orphan vulnerable children. It is now time that they are saying, okay, if we did this, it worked, why can't we do this? They're already taking the masks to the communities. They're already starting to say, how do we help the children go to school? So different strategies are starting at community level. And we also know that the community-based organizations are very much involved in terms of the response to the COVID-19.
Yeah. Can you tell us a little more about grandmothers and how grandmothers are doing right now in terms of, are they facing additional challenges because of the presence of COVID-19? Are they having access issues? Can you tell us how individuals on the ground, but especially grandmothers, are faring out during this time?
I have to say that when COVID-19 came, it found HIV. We were already making a lot of progress. I think I'll say that I was one of the people that definitely celebrated a lot of positive achievements that happened because I traveled extensively to see how grandmothers were affected. And we were saying, oh, wow, we can now see smiles at the grandmothers' faces. We can see that they are moving on, they're involved in different activities. And now with COVID-19, we are now a little bit taken back. The challenges have come. One, we know that with COVID-19, there's less movements. They've said you cannot move. We had grandmothers now coming out of their homes, going to different organizations. They were enjoying that community. They were enjoying sharing their stories, how they've lost their children, what they are doing, and that is not there anymore. Meaning the grandmothers are now thinking, with their own psychological issues, what are we going to do? What is happening? On top of that, they are still taking care of the orphaned vulnerable children. And what happens to them? What's the progress now? So it seems like we are in a dilemma where now grandmothers don't know what is our future. Because when we look at what is happening right now, all the resources are being channeled to the COVID-19. I'll tell you that in the meeting that I attended, the 9 strategies that the government has come up with, not even a mention of HIV. They've just said essential services will go on. I would like them to stress a point to say even HIV should be included in the essential services because it is still a pandemic. That is a serious one. And we need to make sure that it is also focused on. And when we look at the grandmothers, they are there. The challenges are huge because the partners are not receiving enough funding now to be able to support the grandmothers. That is already a challenge. And these are vulnerable communities. They have the orphaned vulnerable children. Are we saying because COVID-19 has come, then all the children, all of a sudden, the orphaned vulnerable children have finished the schools, they are all doing well? We know that there are some of the orphaned vulnerable children who are like 12 years old, who are 13 years old, who are 7 years old. All those ages need to be supported. What is happening to the grandmothers? Those are the challenges that are now being faced because during HIV, we should not forget that they were left out on the agenda. They were left out. Later on, that's when we knew that there were grandmothers there out who were taking care of the orphaned vulnerable children when their parents were dying. So when we look at all this, we see that the grandmothers, they are worried. What is going to happen to us? Now COVID-19 has come, meaning HIV and AIDS will be hidden. We are not going to be heard. Our voices will again disappear. So we see all those challenges. There are all other different challenges, but definitely those are challenges. Psychological issues are serious issues. If a grandmother out there knows COVID-19 has come, I'm not going to be able to get food packages. I'm not going to be able to support my grandchild to go to school. Those are serious issues. They can make that grandmother die early. We started seeing grandmothers becoming young, feeling good, even if they've lost their children. But we can see that come back again, where they can be sad because nobody will mention them. As we deal with this pandemic, we should know that actually there's this serious pandemic in terms of working on it. So that's what I can say about grandmothers. I work with grandmothers. I travel a lot. I'm worried about them. I can't travel. They equally can't be able to do the work. They can't come together. That's already a stress on them. How people have been affected by this, by HIV and AIDS. They needed to be happy, but here we are now. It seems that they are in the middle of thoughts. They are thinking, what happens? So that's what I can say about the grandmothers.
I mean, for me, you've put so much into perspective, right? The fact that, HIV and AIDS is still very much an important issue that needs to be focused on in spite of COVID-19. And the most effective way to approach it is to identify that HIV and AIDS needs to be a priority alongside anything else that may develop. And at the foundation, that's one of the key things that we talk to our stakeholders about, is that even though COVID-19 is very real, HIV and AIDS remains very real. And I thank you for stating that so articulately. We have a question from the audience, and they're wondering about the status of vaccinations. Can you talk to us a little bit about what's going on with vaccinations right now?
Thank you so much about that question. I think I will have to start by saying that, the way HIV and AIDS came, it came with stigma, discrimination, a lot of those issues. With COVID-19, it's the same. There's been a lot of misconceptions. There's been a lot of, stigma and all that. But we do have the vaccines. For example, here in Zambia, we just received 228,000 dosages, and against the 17 million population. But you can't imagine that very few people are going to access that vaccine. What are the reasons? The reasons are that they are scared. They've been saying that if you get the dose, you will die, you collapse immediately. So all those kind of issues have come up. And so we have very less people that have actually gone to take the vaccine. And when you come to the whole idea of COVID-19, we see that the top people are the people now who are coming out to say, I am positive, I have gotten a vaccine. And now when HIV came, it was the grassroots that came out. And now people are saying, why is it that they are coming out? It seems that they are the people who are bringing the COVID-19 virus. So people are now scared to say, it's their business, it's not our business. Actually, in the meeting, I told the Minister of Health like that. I said that they need to strategize. They need to see how they educate people. So all this, again, if you see it, it's falling back on the community-based organizations, because community-based organizations are already trusted by the people. So when they talk, people will understand. So when you look at the vaccine, I was just reading about one of our partners in Uganda, Roto, where a lot of grandmothers have gotten the vaccine, which is a little bit strange, because when this message is going on to say, when you get a vaccine, you collapse. And then you see all these old people going to get their vaccine while the community is still getting scared. Then you say that the importance or the power of community-based organizations is there, and governments have to trust them because people trust them. So the organization had to talk to the people. Grandmothers, it's time for you to get the dose, because they trust them, they've worked with them, they were able to go. So some of the issues that we have, even though vaccines are beginning to come, we already need to know that we have to educate people, sensitize people, do all those things that we've been doing around HIV and AIDS. And that's why we are saying the community-based organizations will emerge as experts, because they'll be able to be involved in a lot of things. They will have to tell government, sensitize, educate people, let people understand. Because if people don't understand, they won't access the vaccine. I have not gotten the vaccine. It's not that I'm scared. No, I'm going to get the vaccine, but that's what it is. So that's what I can say about it.
It sounds like there needs to be an education drive. People need to understand the value of the vaccine and dispel some of the fears in the community. And I definitely feel like the community-based organizations are well positioned to lead that, as you said. But what else do you think community-based organizations need in this time to be most effective? If you were in front of a captive audience of people who have the capacity to help community-based organizations right now, what would you say to them? What do organizations need from us in order to be able to be effective in this time?
I have to be very honest with you. Community-based organizations need resources. These people already have the skills. They've already created systems which are working. I'll tell you, in the early days, we never had not even a system in some of the people that were dealing with HIV and AIDS. Over time, we have systems that have been created. They already had donors. They had people who were funding them. So they were kind of like comfortable with the situation and saying, okay, we are of course heading towards the right direction. They were beginning to work on sustainability issues, strategies on how to definitely be sustainable. And then COVID-19 comes. And then donors all of a sudden try to redirect their resources to say, we have to do with this. This is quite urgent, we have to do with it. And they had to cut their funding. And the community-based organizations right now are facing the challenges of the funding. And not that the community-based organizations have said, we have stopped to do with our clients, no, our beneficiaries. No. The thing is, they already planned. They didn't plan to buy masks. They didn't plan to buy soap. They didn't plan to buy sanitizers. All these things now have come in. How do you then deal with the beneficiaries? How do you take the food packages to the beneficiaries without the mask? When you are going to see the beneficiaries who doesn't have a mask, who doesn't have hand sanitizer, who doesn't have soap. So when you look at all these things, they require funding. They require resources. They need resources to be able to support the community-based organizations on top of what they are doing. Otherwise, if we can't do that, then we'll be opening doors to say, if there are people living with HIV, they'll also be infected with COVID-19. So this is really something I can say I cannot really go behind. I just have to say, we need resources to be able to support the community-based organizations so that they are effective with the work that they are doing on the ground.
Yeah. Against a lot of insurmountable odds, community-based organizations, though, when we interact with them from the foundation standpoint, are still very much motivated to do the work. What do you think, even from your perspective, what's keeping you and others working in this space motivated to continue doing the work?
Well, I'll have to tell you to say that, you know, the community-based organizations struggled in the beginning. They struggled to make sure people trust them. because in the community, it was like, if you are talking about HIV, you are the one who has brought HIV in the community. So they struggled to try and find the strategies to be able to convince people. And one of the things that the community-based organizations have kept motivated with is that they've made people own the problem. In the communities, if you help people accept that this problem is ours, then they'll be involved. Then they'll be able to support the programs. And so one of the things that has motivated the community-based organizations is because people trust them. It's because they've made the problem of HIV owned by the people. I used to go in the communities in the early days. I would find a grandmother with 5 children. This is a blind grandmother who is not even seeing the way to go to the river and draw water. We had young people in that community. Young people could not even go and say, this grandmother has lost her children. She's struggling with her grandchildren. Let's go and help. There was no that sense in the communities. And so the community-based organizations had to struggle to find a way to help community on their problems and accept that HIV is with us. And so because of that, right now, they are motivated because they know, even when they have resources and they want to work around COVID-19, they will be able to convince the beneficiaries. Right now, I've already given an example of what has happened in Rotom. It was not easy to take a grandmother and say, let's go for a test. Grandmother will say, I am a grandmother. I can't go for an HIV test. HIV test is for young people. But today, it's different. Look at it. It's the grandmothers now that are now gone in number to get their vaccine. Young people are still there. They haven't gotten their vaccine. And so somehow the community-based organizations are motivated by that. They know people will listen when they talk. They know that people trust them. They know that the community has owned the problems. And so all those are some of the things that should be able to motivate community-based organizations. Yeah.
Thank you, Idah. We had a comment in the chat saying that your voice was a little bit muffled when you were speaking earlier. And so some were having trouble understanding. So I'll just ask you to stay square against your mic. Okay. I'm not sure if it's moving around. And hopefully they will let us know if the sound is improved. But they asked for us to kind of summarize what you said in terms of what community organizations need to be most effective. And essentially you were saying that those organizations need resources to be able to do their work, that they hadn't planned on, you know, having to purchase things like additional sanitizers and masks, etc. Is there anything else you just want to repeat briefly for the benefit of those who didn't hear your response?
I think I would just add on to say that, you know, why I said resources up front is because it's a lot. I mean, COVID-19 is a new pandemic. People need to be trained. With HIV, people were trained to counsel people. People were trained to educate, to sensitize. Even this pandemic, the COVID-19, we need people to be trained. We need resources to train people. We need resources to go out and educate people. We have volunteers that are going every day in the communities. They need resources. With the cutting of funding from different communities, we definitely need funding. As an AIDS activist, I know what it is out there. I know I haven't traveled, but I've traveled a lot. And I've seen the way communities can really spend their energy to make sure their communities understand. And even on this, I feel for them, I know resources are needed on the ground to be able to do all these pieces that we are talking about, to deliver masks, to deliver food packages, to be able to educate, to train, and all that. So that's what I can say about what community needs right now. We can never be tired about really mobilizing resources. We need resources. They are the things that will help us to sort out some of these things or additional strategies that we have now with this dual pandemic that we have, HIV and COVID-19. We need resources to also be able to be effectively deliver the services to the people.
Yeah. Can you, thank you so much. Can you tell us a little bit about you know, if you had to say one thing that you wish people knew about many of the communities that are funded, where we fund partners to do the work, what would you say is, you know, a reality that you wish people knew existed in the community?
I think there's a lot of realities that we can talk about with the SLF funded organizations. One of the things that I want to talk about, which is a reality, is that the SLF funded partners are never tired. They are never tired. You can see that even as this pandemic has come, they haven't surrendered. There's no surrender for them. Instead, they are saying, what do we do in terms of supporting our people, in terms of continuing our people? So one of the realities is that they begin to talk to the people. I think the beauty of community-based organizations is that they're right in the community. Every day they are learning from the people. That's the beauty with community-based organizations. And so the reality, one of the realities is that they are there. The services are there. People don't need to go out and look for the services. They are right there. And when this has come, people have even been going to them to say, what do we do? They are not turning people away and say, can you go away? We don't have funding for COVID-19. Instead, they are saying, what do we do? How do we best serve our communities? I know I was reading about one of our partners who went to the government and said, what do we do? Because people are coming to them and say, our grandchildren are going to stay at home without going to school. And now they came up with a strategy of just getting a few people, meeting a few people to be able to deliver services. So that's one of the realities about the SLF funded partners, that they are right in the communities, people trust them. Anytime people can knock on their doors, they are not very far away and people trust them. I think this is a very important reality that people need to know. And that's why we talk about they need resources, because they won't send people away to say, you go, we don't have funding. Other organizations are sending people away. They are saying we don't have funding for COVID-19. You can go away, but they will never do that because they are right in the community. They are part of that of the communities. That's what I can say.
That's such an inspiring and powerful statement, that they are never tired. It just means that it shows the level of resilience as well as the commitment that community-based organizations display, right? At the end of the day, they know that without those community-based organizations creating the infrastructure for people to feel safe, for people to have access, for people to come to without fear of being judged or stigma, they have to exist. And so that concept of we're never tired is so inspiring and such a strong statement. I'm really glad you said that. Now is the time for storytelling. So I would love if you would share some stories of triumph with us. We know that there are indeed challenges, but there's so many stories of people showing much triumph against the backdrop of all of these challenges. So would you share a story with us that inspires you during this time?
I think as I sit here and listen to that question given me, Niambi, I go back a lot. I think I remember in 2006 when about 100 grandmothers traveled to Toronto for a conference where they went and shared their stories and talked about the trauma they had been going through. They shared a lot and came back to Africa as change agents. Because where they went, they met different grandmothers from different countries, from South Africa, from Zambia. They came together and they saw themselves as, we are not the only ones in Kenya. We are not the only ones in Uganda. So this thing touches the whole continent. And so they were able to learn about even new strategies of how their friends were dealing with the HIV and AIDS as they lost their children and they took back to their communities. And I remember going to Mozambique, deep in the rural area. I went to visit the grandmothers. And when I looked out very far in the distance, the grandmothers were singing. It was very far, the car was very far. And all I could see was a white t-shirt out of everything I was seeing. the grandmother heard, there's someone coming from the Stephen Lewis Foundation, and I have to wear my t-shirt of the conference so she can see that I'm a good teacher. I've taught everything I learned from the conference. And when I came, the grandmothers were singing, they were dancing, and I was there and I saw the t-shirt and I said, oh, so you were there? She said, I was there. Now you can ask all these grandmothers to tell you what I've taught them. The grandmothers started to share about what they had learned. Oh, we have learned about this, and this is what we are doing in our community. We had our fellow grandmother made this and that and that. And it was really interesting for me to learn. I sat there and I was learning. These are communities where you went and grandmothers were crying. They were now beginning to feel good. They've learned new strategies of how to live the loss of their children and how they can take care of their grandchildren. I met this grandmother who said this and this, and I brought it up to the grandmothers. And I think about all that, and I go back again to the gathering we had in Tanzania, where we had all these grandmothers came. I had a chance to talk to a lot of grandmothers, and the grandmothers were very happy. They said, one grandmother that I met said, you know, my daughter who died used to go to conferences a lot and used to bring me little things, you know, soap from the hotel and all that. I didn't know it was conferences like this. Now I'm here. She was also equally packing the little things to take back to her grandchildren. And on top of that, they never thought they would leave their communities, which were so thick with the stigma, discrimination. They were being laughed at. They had lost their children. In the end, they became teachers. They became people that can be appreciated. They came to the conference and they said, oh, wow, we've also come to rest our heads. We can sleep on our pillows and feel good about the work that we have done in our communities. It's not just being laughed at, but we've done a job, we've worked. We are now taking care of our grandchildren. We've come to showcase our skills here. And they said, in fact, on top of that, we are taking back small blankets that were given the showers for our grandchildren so they can cover. You look at all this development that was happening before COVID-19 came, and now I'm thinking to myself, what are our grandmothers thinking? I'm sure they were looking forward to say one day we should be able to go to another conference where we can now talk about all these other developments that have happened with COVID-19. Everyone is not moving. We are all now trying to distance ourselves or stay wherever we are. And I'm thinking about them. As a person that works with grandmothers, I'm thinking about that. When are we going to meet? When are we going to ever have this time come together again to listen to all these beautiful stories, and not stories where these people will be crying, but stories of hope now and stories of happiness. Where are we going to meet? So all these things I think about sometimes when as I sit in Zambia and thinking about the grandmother campaign, and thinking about all these grandmothers in different countries, and I tell myself, when am I going to leave Zambia and go to Uganda? When am I going to leave Zambia and probably go to a gathering in Kenya? When am I going to leave Zambia and go to Canada and talk to the grandmothers in Canada? When is this going to happen? Because we were moving. Already we were feeling that. I was feeling it, that this is coming to an end. Now it will be something else because they're doing income generating activities were being done. Everything was being done. Everything that people do were being done by grandmothers. Saving was being done. When are we going to do this? I just feel I needed to reflect on this as we have this conversation. Yeah.
Thank you, Idah. I'm just going to remind you to stay as close to your mic as possible, as central as possible, so that your voice is not muffled when you move away. And at this time, I do want to invite anyone who has questions to put your questions in the Q&A so that I can ask Idah all of your questions on your behalf. But Idah, one of the questions that I would love to ask you, and you kind of hinted to it in your last response here about looking forward to a time when we can all come together again and share stories. You know, what opportunities do you think exist in spite of all of what is going on? What are some great opportunities you think exist right now for grandmothers and for people working in HIV and AIDS that, you know, would help us move forward in spite of the challenges present due to COVID-19?
I think we definitely do have a lot of opportunities. The fact that systems have been created and we were not done to work on some of the strategies that had come up, because as we've been moving with this work, there's so much strategies that have been coming out. Strategies like, you know, we need support groups now for grandmothers and their grandchildren who have been taking drugs, because now they want to know why do they take drugs and not other grandchildren. So many other strategies have been coming out. And those are the opportunities, because the work is not done. The strategies are out there. All those are opportunities that we need to take advantage of, even during this time. So the work is ongoing. It is ongoing, it's not done. And all these strategies that they have been working on, they need to continue to be worked on. So we still definitely have all these great opportunities, and people, grandmothers, for example, we have grandmothers who are even activists right now, who have been going in their communities and advocating, bringing other grandmothers together to be able to continue to talk about what do we do. So we definitely have all these opportunities within the communities that will definitely help us to be able to continue with the work that we are doing. Yeah.
And Idah, we have a question, and the question says, what is possible to help along the education of the children during COVID times? So this is about access to education and continuing the education of children during this time. What is possible to help them?
I think already what I'm saying is that COVID-19 is a new pandemic, and already there are guidelines which are being put in place that we need to abide by, like for the children, in terms of how we should support the children. The children need masks to be able to go to school. They need to be able to sanitize or to wash their hands and all that. And I think this will be the job for the community-based organizations, because sometimes what we are seeing, schools definitely know that children need to mask up, children need to hand sanitize, they need to wash their hands. But this is not being focused on. It's like the schools do have their mission and their mandate. Our mandate or our mission is to teach the children, to be able to teach them and go back home. They do not have that mandate of sitting in class and start to teach about COVID-19. It's more like what has been happening with HIV and AIDS. We used to have the kids and the community-based organizations were like, what do we do? I think we used to have what they call after school, where children would go to school, they get the learning from school, whatever they need to learn, and they come back to the community-based organizations where they are taught now on what HIV is all about, what it is, and the children would understand by that. I'm very sure that that strategy will definitely continue. And that's why we are talking about resources, that the community-based organizations need resources, because they need to be able to teach the children how they should mask up in details, because schools won't go in details, but community-based organizations will go in details and give them the masks, and the children will understand. We used to hear, whenever I used to visit children in after school, I would see the children together to welcome me whenever I visited the countries, and they would be singing, their parents have died of AIDS, and they'll be singing, our mothers have died because HIV is bad. HIV is bad. They were singing HIV is bad. They were already learning, but schools won't have that time to be able to detail the COVID-19. They have a mandate. I teach mathematics. I will not talk about COVID-19 for 30 minutes. I'll say, oh, the people, children, can you please mask up and sanitize? What is 1 + 1? What is 2 + 2? I will focus on my subjects that I'm employed for. I will not focus on COVID-19. And so if we have to help the children, I think the power will still lie in the community-based organizations, that they intensify the teaching of the COVID-19 to the children. Already I can say, I think I was reading about one of our partners where the children already they're putting in place some strategies of how they can best support the children. I think that's what I can say about that question.
Awesome, thank you. Can you talk to us a little bit about over the last 15 years, there's been a lot of transformation and change that I'm sure you've witnessed. Can you talk to us a little bit about like where you started and where we are today, and how you've seen things transform over the last few years?
I think I'll tell you that I think I've been fortunate to be able to walk the journey with the foundation. When we started in the early days, I think it was very difficult. It was very difficult because almost every community in the SLF supported countries, you would see tears. If you were to take a towel, you would really come out with a towel weight of tears. People were just crying. They didn't know that there would be hope. They didn't understand where the HIV and AIDS was going. All they were thinking about was the world is shutting on us. All the grandmothers were saying, where are we going? I had sayings from the grandmothers, where grandmothers would say, these are not my children, denying the children of their own children, their grandchildren. They would say, they are not my children. My children have died. I'm also waiting to die. They never thought those are also children they need to accept because their children are gone. But over time, with the 15 years with the foundation, I've been to communities, Niambi, where I can see a grandmother holding on to a grandson and saying, this is my husband. He's going to take care of me. I'm like, you said you wanted to die. These were not your children. How come this has become your husband? He's going to take care of you because you wanted to die. All these things are things we've celebrated over the 15 years, where we see the confidence come back. The communities becoming more healthy. Communities were thickened by HIV and AIDS, stigma, discrimination, isolation. Talk about all the bad things. They were in these communities, worse off to the grandmothers. The grandmothers were seen as witches, as people who don't even deserve to live. But today, go in these communities. That's why I'm saying it's so sad. We can't come together again. I really would want to see where they are, how they are now jumping up and down, because now you go back to these communities. They want you to sit 1 hour listening to their successful stories and not tears. They have accepted. Our children have died. We have to accept to live with the pain, but we have to move on and support the children they've left behind and be able to contribute to the development of our countries. And that's why even in conferences, they're able to be happy to say, we've come to showcase our work. They've even forgotten 1 minute that our children have gone, what they are doing now. And so it's been a lot that we can talk about here that has seen the 15 years. To me, I think I used to think like, this is going to take long and long, maybe even when I die as an AIDS activist, I'll die and leave tears behind. I never thought I would be going now, seeing myself as just wanting to play with the grandmothers. I go to the communities, they just want to be dancing. There are beautiful dresses, which I never saw. I can see them now because all they wanted was, we are just going to die. We don't have anything to live for. We don't have anything to celebrate for. We really have nothing. But today, things are different. It's unfortunate. The COVID-19 has disturbed our programs. I think we should be able to see a lot of progress. The 15 years that we've seen it with the Stephen Lewis Foundation looks like 50 years to me, because it's a lot that has been achieved in this small period of time that we never expected would be achieved. That's what I can say about the 15 years. I'm so happy to be part of celebrating the 15 years.
That's awesome. Oh my gosh. I get goosebumps when you say that, you thought you'd die probably and still leave behind tears. And the truth is now people are dancing and celebrating and realizing that, HIV is not a death sentence and that they can still have a great quality of life and still need to be very much engaged for the children who have been orphaned by AIDS. There's a question and it says, AIDS stigma towards caregivers and persons living with HIV is still very prevalent in Canada. can you comment on AIDS stigma in the communities you work with?
I think I will say that I already said it, that, once you win the trust of the communities, you are okay. And once communities have trust in you, then you are okay. So the communities that we work with, first and foremost, they've been able to accept now that HIV and AIDS is part of us. It is a problem that we have to own. And so the stigma and discrimination has kind of like gone down. I'll give an example. I think when I visited, it was my last trip, I think, to Ethiopia. When I visited Ethiopia and met the two grandmothers who really, when I visited them in the early days, felt like they didn't need to live. They needed to die because community is laughing at them. Even my grandchild is HIV positive. My daughter died of AIDS. I have HIV as well. And they were thinking like, we are not fit to live. But when I visited them, they could show me cards, the identity cards. Everyone in the communities follows them. Oh, I have a problem. My child is sick. Can we come to get tested? Oh, I have a problem. And that's the beauty of community-based organizations, because they've now already instilled that trust in the communities. People trust them that their services are working and people need to be safe. And we see that the stigma and discrimination now towards caregivers who they wanted to die. Remember that person I'm talking about needed to die. But here, she's now the boss in the community. She's calling herself the boss. She moves with her head high because everyone is approaching her to say, can I come to your clinic? Can I come to your clinic? So the stigma and discrimination towards caregivers is gone down. Instead, they are the people they need most in the community. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Idah. I mean, this has been really enlightening. I hope, despite some of the sound issues, that everyone has heard, the stories of triumph and the inspiring words that you have shared. I think what will stay with me, and I hope will stay with others, is that the need continues to be great. Community-based organizations are staying very much motivated to doing the work because they realize that they have an important role to play, that education is important, and that it can be done with the resources on the ground, but that much more resources are needed to really penetrate the bubble that COVID-19 has put around communities. But that great progress has been made over the last 15 years. There's been great transformation and change, and it's time for us to all come together, right? It's time for us to all come together, to share those stories in person. Is there anything that I haven't asked you that you would like to share as we wind down?
I just have a few words or just a comment. I just have to say that, as COVID-19 has come, we should never forget that HIV is out there. HIV is there. We have to welcome both pandemics. This dual pandemic has to be welcomed. In whatever we are doing, we have to remember that HIV and AIDS is as well a serious pandemic. We should not be, focus only on COVID-19 and say, oh, this is the most serious pandemic. We should always remember. I think all the people listening to today, it's night in Zambia. It's it's night time in Zambia. I have to say the people listening should go back thinking that, as we fight the COVID-19, we should not put HIV under the table. HIV and AIDS should also be like this. As COVID-19 is this side, also HIV is this side. These are pandemics. They are serious pandemics that need to be worked on. And we really need to embark on working on the dual pandemics. I think those are my words. We should not forget and include HIV in whatever talks we are having. Like I told the Minister of Health, Public Director, he wanted to step out and said, I'm busy, I want to go. I said, before you go, I have a word to tell you to take back to the Minister of Health. And I told him, I said, can you treat COVID-19 the way you've treated HIV and AIDS? Then you win this dual pandemic. And don't say, oh, because the COVID-19 is COVID, and tell people, come and get the vaccine. Accord people the confidentiality, cancel people, let people be canceled, let people understand. Can we treat these two pandemics as the same pandemics? And don't forget, HIV is a serious pandemic. When you are saying people on medicine, can get side effects when they get a vaccine include that people with HIV, they are safe to get a vaccine. Take those words to the ministry. These are the same words I'm leaving here today to say, as we deal with COVID-19, please let us not forget. Let's remember we have another pandemic which is serious, which we are fighting for, and we need to be involved. Thank you, Niambi. I needed to say all those things. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. There's a comment in the chat that I think, as I was thinking about how I would thank you, Barbara Rotha wrote, Idah, your commitment, passion, and energy is inspiring. Thank you. And I think that kind of summarizes what I was going to say. So I will just leave it at that. Thank you so much. And I want to invite Sarah Dopp back on screen with us to talk to the audience a little bit and do the wrap up.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Idah and Niambi. Idah, it's always so inspiring and energizing to hear the insights and stories that you have to share with us. And Niambi, thank you so much for facilitating this conversation and this opportunity for us to come together virtually today. And to all of you in the audience today, I'd also just like to extend our deep appreciation from the Stephen Lewis Foundation for all that you do. We are always inspired by the ways in which you contribute to and engage in the Grandmothers Campaign. And over the course of this past year, it's really been remarkable the ways in which this community has continued to evolve and adapt. And we're looking forward to more opportunities to celebrate this milestone of the campaign with you in the coming months. Thank you.